Right, that's recording. The level looks good. Got my notes. Right, let's get into it. Hello there, and welcome to the first proper episode of my humble little podcast, Trad Town, where we talk about all things kind of unsolved mysteries, creepy folklore, that kind of thing. It's just your buddy Grizzly Jim, and today I have got something very exciting for you. It's a story that's very dear to my heart. It's an account that's got absolutely everything you could want. It's got police chases, it's got conspiracies, it's got UFOs, it's got everything. And it is an account that is incredibly dear to my heart. It's something that's been with me for many, many years, and I can almost pinpoint exactly when this story first came onto my radar. And I sort of, it was really the first mystery I ever properly researched, and it was back in 1992. It was my first day at high school. We all got sent to the library, and to pick a book to start reading for the lesson or whatever, and me and this other lad kind of reached for the same book, and it was a book about unsolved UFO mysteries. And I know that sounds like a bit of a meet cute when you reach for the same book, but this guy turned out to be later my best friend. He's still my best friend now. We're in our 40s now, and we still talk about this story because the imagery and the wording of this story just sort of, it's so ingrained in our subconscious now. It's just a story I've read so many times and looked into so many times, and it's just ingrained in my mind now, and especially some of the aspects of this story. But yeah, so it's really important that I wanted this to be the first ever episode of Trad Town, just because it's a story that means so much to me. So without further ado, cut yourself a nice big slab of cherry pie, pour yourself a nice big mug of black coffee, sit back, relax as we get into the Socorro story. Picture the scene. Socorro, New Mexico, April 24th, 1964. It's a sunny April afternoon, and this town, it's a quiet town, right in the middle of nowhere. It's in the desert. Population of 10,000. Nothing really happens in Socorro. It's a pretty quiet town. So, cue our hero of this story, Lonnie Zamora. He's a patrolman, he's a policeman. He's been on the force for about 5 years. He's 31 years old. He's a good guy. He's an honest guy. He's well liked around town. He's well respected. But he's just going about his daily kind of duties as a police officer, checking for speeders and whatnot, grabbing coffee, doing everything a small town cop really does. But he's sitting on the edge of town checking for speeding motorists this particular afternoon, when this hot rod comes barreling down towards him, doing way over the speed limit. Now, bear in mind, it's the 60s, so you've got greasers and hot rods and all that kind of thing. So Lonnie sticks on his blue lights and goes after this hot rod, and he chases him right through town. Goes all the way through town. This kid does not want to stop. He doesn't want to get in trouble. He's got a souped up car. He thinks, you know what, I can outrun this guy. It's just a beat cop. I can do this guy. So he floors in. He goes right through town. But Lonnie's not giving up. This is the most exciting thing that's happened in town all day. So I'm not letting this go. So he powers through the town, right out into the desert, giving chase to this kid. When suddenly something catches his eye, and it catches his eye, and it distracts him so much that he breaks off the chase. He breaks off the chase. He lets the kid get away. He drives off into the desert. And he sees something in the distance, and immediately to Lonnie, it seems like it's an overturned car or an accident of some sort. And he's like, well, that kind of takes precedence over this kid. He sort of about 5:45 p.m. he radios the dispatcher, Annette Lopez, to say that he's possibly seen something, and he's going to go and have a look and see what he can see. So he drives up this an old dried up creek bed, and he makes his way into the desert as best as he can to get to this thing that he can see. But as he gets closer, he realizes it's not an overturned car or even a car at all. What he actually sees is this orb, sphere type thing, almost like an egg, really bright, whether it's white or whether it's sort of just like a shiny metallic and the sun's bouncing off it, but it's really, really bright thing in the desert, completely alien to him. He does not know what this is. And according to some accounts, he goes back to the car and tries to radio in, but he gets nothing but static. He tries to call this thing, and he's like, hey, I'm seeing this really weird thing. I need someone to come and check it out with me. But according to some of the cases I've read, he gets nothing but static. He can't get in touch with dispatch. He can't radio HQ. He can't do anything. So he's sort of driving up this creek. He gets out to try and get a closer look. He can't get right up to it because he's up a little bit higher. Yeah, this sphere that he would later refer to it as a craft. But it was this big round shape in the middle of the desert on 4 little legs. He sees 2 creatures, people, I don't know, little green men, I don't know. He sees 2 figures walking around this craft or whatever it may be. And there was, now this is the thing that really sticks in my mind. I still draw this symbol today. Now he saw on the side of this ship, or craft, or whatever he wanted to call it, there was a symbol, and in the book that I read originally, there's symbols there, and even now when I'm doodling on a piece of paper, I doodle this symbol. It's that ingrained in my kind of subconscious, and it's basically it's like an arrow on top of a horizontal line with like a crescent line over the top of it. And he sees this symbol on this object, and it's completely alien to him. He doesn't know what this thing is. It is bizarre. But then he kind of hears this large kind of metallic noise, and it's described as like doors closing or something. And then he notices that the two small figures that were sort of walking around this object have disappeared. And this thing starts to lift off into the air, and it blasts with such an intense heat that he gets kind of knocked backwards. And in the story I read, his glasses fall off, so he doesn't get a perfectly clear look at what happens after that. It's just kind of convenient, I suppose. But he's blasted backwards by this intense heat, and there's this huge blue flame coming out the bottom of this object as the legs retract, and it lifts off slowly into the air, hovers there for a little bit, and then moves off to the west, sort of just disappears off into the desert. And this guy, this poor Lonnie, is just, Dios mío, what is, he just does not know what's going on. I mean, can you imagine seeing something like that? You have no concept of what this thing is, and it's just happened in front of you. You can't quite believe what he's seen, and it's absolutely insane if you try and put yourself into his mind and trying to fathom what's going on. But he regains his consciousness. He sort of puts his hair back on, puts his hat back on, tries to find his glasses, and he gets back to his patrol car and he tries to radio it in, and wouldn't you know, his radio is working again now. So radios the New Mexico State Police, and he wants to speak to his friend Sergeant Sam Chavez, and he's like, look, Sam, get here now, come alone, something's happened, I need to talk to you. So a little bit later, Sergeant Chavez comes up. Chavez is kind of like, Lonnie's not making any sense here. He's talking a mile a minute. He's really excited. He's also a bit confused. What the hell's gone on here? So Lonnie sort of describes what happened as best as he could. So they decide they're just gonna go down and go down the creek bed, go to where this craft was, and have a little investigate before they do anything. And they find some strange things when they get to where the craft was. There is some really intense scorch marks on the ground where this thing lifted off, and it was so intense that some of the sand had started to sort of turn into glass. It was that the heat was that intense from this blast. and there were sort of indentations of where a landing gear or something would have been pressed into the ground. They were supposed to be, there were round indentations. They were 9 inches deep by sort of 9 inches sort of round, pressed deep into the sand around this scorch mark. Some of the brush had been scorched, and there was no shadow of doubt there was something had gone on there. What that was exactly, I don't know. But not far from where this incident happened, there is an army base, a missile test range. It's called White Sands Missile Range. And they pick up that something's gone on. Whether or not Lonnie or Sergeant Chavez has sort of radioed it into the base, I don't know. I couldn't find any information about that. But within about 90 minutes, a Captain Richard T. Holder and a few military police turn up to investigate the scene of the crime, do a little bit of investigating, see what's gone on. And speaking years later, Holder would say that he thought, something's gone on, something's gone wrong at the base, something's gone awry, we need to sort of sort this out before it gets too big. Before it gets out that we've done something. He didn't know what happened. He was from the base and he didn't know what happened, but he just assumed that something had gotten into trouble, something had gone wrong with something he was supposed to be in charge of. So Captain Holder was sort of investigating with Lonnie and Chavez, and they were kind of mooching around the scene. The MPs were trying to sort of, I mean, by this point, people had found out that something was going on in the desert, and there was a small crowd sort of congregating. So between the military police and the state troopers who were working together at this point, were kind of trying to keep the bystanders away, making sure no one was overstepping the boundary, no one was sort of compromising the scene, as it were. But yeah, Holder was really looking at some of the stuff. He was very interested in the scorch marks. He was very interested in the divots that were left by the what may or may not have been a landing gear. He was very interested in the fact that there was some brush, some bushes that was sort of looked like they'd been blowtorched on the one side. But Holden, he locked down the area. He designated it as sensitive. The military police were intensified. There was more military police turned up, and they really secured the area. Still working with local law enforcement to keep it sort of hush-hush. But there was within the state troopers, there was a young trooper there by the name of Ted Jordan, he pulled out his own personal camera. He wasn't doing it for any police reasons. He just happened to have his camera with him. He was a keen photographer. He pulled out his camera and started snapping away at the scene. But the military police, they confiscated his camera. They said, you know what, we'll develop these. You'll get copies of the pictures and your camera back. Don't worry. We're just, just a precaution. He never got his camera back. He never got the pictures back. And he would periodically check in with the base and be like, hey, where's my camera? Where's my camera? I mean, cameras weren't cheap back then. He wanted his camera back. And he never did get his camera back. But when he did ask about the pictures, they said, unfortunately, there was too much radiation, and the pictures were compromised. So, no, there's no pictures, which seems a little bit suspect. Take from that what you will. But yeah, it's a shame Ted never quite got his camera back. So back to the scene of the incident. The military police and law enforcement, they're continuing a fingertip search of the area, looking for absolutely anything unusual. It's said that they were specifically looking for metallic objects, but they didn't find anything. There was nothing there other than the scorch marks and the divots. There was absolutely nothing there. Although everything they did see that was there did corroborate Lonnie's story. It from what he said to what they saw, it added up. It made sense. And Holden never really thought or had any reason to believe that Lonnie was making any of this up or that it was a hoax. I mean, this guy was an upstanding member of society. He wasn't one for tall tales or anything. He was clearly disturbed by what he saw. From the very beginning, Holden never really thought Lonnie had made any of this up, or he had any reason to make any of it up, or that he would perpetuate a hoax or anything. He, like I say, Lonnie was Johnny Law. He was a classic straight-laced lawman of the 1960s. He wasn't after 5 minutes of fame or anything. He was, in fact, later on, he would sort of retire from it all, and he didn't really like speaking about it. You'd think if someone was hoaxing a story, they'd push their own agenda, they'd push it, but he didn't. He was pretty humble about the whole thing, and he did give interviews and whatnot as the story unfolded and as time went on. But it wasn't something he was pursuing. He just wanted answers and an explanation as much as anybody. Now, our hero, Lonnie Zamora, wasn't the only person to see something strange that day. Now, if we head back into Socorro town, at a gas station, there's a young boy called Jimmy Grinder who overheard a whole conversation at the gas station between a car that was passing through town, filling up with gas, talking to the attendant, about how on the way here he saw something really strange. He thought it was an aircraft of something. He was like, hey, you fly your planes pretty low down here, guy. However they speak in New Mexico. Sorry about the accent. But yeah, he saw something, and it flew basically over his bonnet of his car, and he estimated it was traveling around 150 miles per hour. But something flew straight past his car, really upset the whole family. And unfortunately, I can't find any information about this family, only the fact that this Jimmy Grinder overheard the conversation. So, I mean, they were passing through town. They weren't from Socorro. They were from elsewhere, but they were driving right through town. So they weren't there to stop and give statements or anything. So I can't find any information on that particular family. But to this day, Jimmy Grinder is still sort of adamant that it wasn't anything terrestrial. It wasn't anything that can be explained by a weather balloon or something of that nature. He's definitely in the kind of extraterrestrial camp, as it were. I mean, like, there's no way this was a helicopter. There's no way this was a weather balloon. It was something. And anyone that's involved with this story, he's just desperate to find answers to what actually happened. The next morning, the newspapers had picked up on the story, and the whole town was abuzz with UFO talk. Now, a fair few years back, you had the supposed alien crash landing in Roswell, so UFO fever was a bit of a thing in the US at that sort of time. It petered out a little bit, but there was still an interest, and this incident had kind of reignited that interest in the UFO fever of UFOs, little green men, and people were just desperate for more information. And Lonnie started getting phone calls from all over the world. I think BBC, from the UK. Everybody wanted a little piece of the pie. Everybody wanted to know a little bit more about the story, what he saw, what he thought he saw, perpetuating this kind of UFO kind of fever that was going on. Like I say, you'd think if this was a hoax, Lonnie would buy into this, and he'd use the opportunity to talk to anyone he possibly could about it, and sort of get himself out there as much as he possibly could. And he didn't. He really, all he wanted was answers himself. He didn't care about the fame. He didn't care about anything. He just wanted answers. So that strikes me as something interesting for his character. Makes it sort of a little bit more, well, maybe it's a little bit more credible that he's seen this. He's not pushing his agenda. He just wants answers. After the dust had settled a little bit, the Air Force actually took over the investigation of the incident in the Socorro Desert, and they sent in a Dr. J. Allen Hynek to do a little bit more investigating. And he was a consultant on Project Blue Book, which is something I'm sure we will go into much more in depth at a later date. But Project Blue Book is the official US study of the UFO phenomenon. So, whenever we talk about UFOs or anything in this podcast, I'm pretty sure Project Blue Book would come up. But Hynek was a well-respected scientist, astronomer. He really knew his stuff, and he was brought in, and he went to Socorro, and he looked at the evidence that was there. He even met with Lonnie and did some investigating with him. They went back to the scene, took some measurements, and he found the evidence that was there absolutely compelling, genuinely compelling. Again, he mirrored some of the statements of what the army found, where the story that Lonnie Zamora had given them matched up with the evidence that they found. Yeah, he was hugely impressed with Lonnie. He said he was a genuinely nice guy. He was an honest, again, the story of Lonnie Zamora just being such a really nice, honest guy was brilliant. And the fact that there was no possibility of Lonnie hoaxing this. He was adamant that Lonnie was telling the truth and that there was something there. But later on, about 26 days after the initial incident on May 20th, Hynek wrote a private memo to himself and kept it in his files for years and years and years and years. And it wasn't discovered till way after his death back in 1986. And it was basically expressing absolute disdain for the way Project Blue Book handled the investigation. And he obviously there is internal office politics within government agencies, I suppose. But yeah, he didn't like the fob story. The official story that came out years later was the fact that it was an experimental craft, secret craft. It's one of ours. Don't worry. It's the government. Don't worry. It's not aliens. It's a government craft. We don't really want to tell anyone about it, but yeah, that's what it was. Don't worry. Forget about it. It's fine. Now, Dr. Hynek didn't buy that. He thought that was just cooked up to keep Congress from harassing the Air Force, a fob-off story. And that never really sat right with him until the day he died. But that was the official line. That's what the government was saying, that it was an experimental craft. They were doing some testing in the deserts, and unfortunately, some civilians and a police officer saw what happened. It wasn't intended for anyone to see what was going on. So, yeah, sorry about that. It's not aliens, don't worry. It's just us. But no matter what other people believe, Lonnie has no doubt witnessed something strange and unusual, something that rocked his world, something that stayed with him until the day he died, and he never really, that we know, got the answers he wanted. Now, Lonnie stayed in Socorro for all of his life. He retired from the force, and he became a gas station attendant, but sadly dying of a heart attack at the age of 76 back in November 2009. Never really knowing what he witnessed. He had his theories. He knew what he thought he saw. Other people know what he thought he saw. Some people know exactly what he saw, but I guess we'll never officially know what happened, what Lonnie saw out in the desert that day. Lonnie's claims are investigated by a few different government projects, like we say, including Project Blue Book. Multiple civilian ufologists really took an interest in the case. It really is a famous case. It's probably one you're familiar with. Like I say, it's one that I've known about for many years. Although many of these ufology groups consider the Zamora incident or the Socorro story, or whatever you want to call it, one of the most credible encounters or extraterrestrial encounters on record. There are other people that have got some other potential explanations for it, and one of which is one that UFO skeptics like to suggest that Lonnie observed was a lunar lander prototype. Now, bear in mind this was before the moon landings, so not that long before the moon landing. So, NASA, various government agencies will be working hard, trying to work out how they're going to operate on the moon. And I think they did a lot of testing in the desert because there wasn't a lot of people around, and also the terrain probably matched something similar to what the surface of the moon, although the gravity would be different. It stands a good chance that potentially it may have been a lunar lander prototype. And obviously the space race was on. America's going to want to keep that very close to its heart. They don't want to play their cards too soon, with the Soviet space race and everything. So to me, that kind of makes sense that it was that it may have been a lunar module. Now, we're talking in the 60s here. Me and you, right now, we know exactly what a lunar module looks like. We can picture it now. We've seen hundreds and hundreds of pictures and video footage of what a lunar module looks like. But if you go back to the 60s and you try and describe a lunar module to someone, it's gonna seem completely alien and completely out of this world. So out of all the kind of skeptical interpretations of it, I think that's probably the skeptical one that holds the most water, that it was a lunar lander. I don't know. I always try and find the truth in these things, and as much as I want to be wowed by the unexplained, and as much as I love it, I think you've got to kind of, at least from my point anyway, from my point of view of the podcast, I've got to look at it from both angles. And it does seem like a fantastical, unexplained story, and it may well be a UFO sighting, one of the most credible UFO sightings, or it could be, like the official word is, that it was an experimental craft. I guess we'll never know. I mean, there are people that say it was that it was a hoax perpetuated to drive up tourism to Socorro, which I guess, if that was true, it did. But looking at the evidence and the amount of scientists and sort of very learned people that came to investigate this site, yeah, there was a lot of evidence to say that there was something powerful there, and I don't think you could hoax anything that powerful, like the sand being sort of turned into glass and the scorch marks. If it was a hoax, one of the things said it was just a balloon with a candle in it, it wouldn't do that. I mean, I think that doesn't hold any weight for me. I think it's either a close encounter and something incredible happened in the desert that day to a very credible man, or he got caught up in something he shouldn't have seen, and it was an experimental landing. I guess we'll never know, but that, and it's the crux of it really, is the Socorro story. Like I say, it's one of my absolute favorite unsolved mysteries. And it's something that's been, like I mentioned before, it's very dear to my heart, and it has been for a very long time. And I've really enjoyed sharing that with you. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I am very new. I'm still finding my feet. I'm still trying to find a pattern, trying to put everything together. I'm still learning the equipment. So if this episode has seemed a little bit raw, a little bit rough and ready, that's because it is. And I'm a bit raw, and I am a bit rough and ready. But I'm learning as we go. I'm finding my feet. I am really enjoying this. I love the sound of my own voice, and I love a captive audience. So this is a really good fit for me, and I really do enjoy sharing these thoughts and things with you. But yeah, I'm slowly getting things set up. I've got the Instagram account set up now, so if you want to drop me a message over on Instagram, that's at Tradtown, very simple. On Instagram, I think it's the same on Facebook as well. I'll have a website, or I might have something connected to my Grizzly Gym website. Like I say, it's all set up. I'm just going through, working stuff out, and slowly moving forward, recording sort of various episodes. So when I do launch, there's going to be a few episodes out there, so you don't have to wait months for another episode. I'm hoping to get episodes out every couple of weeks, maybe. I don't know if that's a bit of a stretch, but we'll see. I do enjoy doing this, so thank you so much for listening. It means the world. But yeah, I've been the mayor of Trad Town Grizzly Jim. Well, you take care, shoot straight, and I'll speak to you later.